Now we are going to start a very, very important webinar. And I'm very grateful to all the speakers who have already joined, except Mr. Amod Mani Dikshit. He is trying, and my technical team is already working with him, and he is helping. So in the meanwhile, the moment he will join, we would move the proceedings. But I think we should start now, and he will join in between. So let me take this opportunity to welcome all of you for the new webinar series, which National Institute of Disaster Management has started in the time of COVID as an alternative that how we are reaching out to the people and also trying to get many operational as well as policy level webinars. This is one of the policy level webinar, but also leading to disaster response and in the time of COVID, and if there is an earthquake happens. So that is this basic idea of this particular webinar. As India has seen two other disasters already happened during the COVID itself, and the two cyclones, and we got affected severely, and our people have responded. So this is the critical time for any disaster management professional, policymakers, and operational professional. We say, normal saying is say that praja sukham ragya, prajanam cha hite hitam, natma priya hitam ragya, prajanam tu priya hitam. Meaning thereby, this is the text which we have taken from the Kautilya Arthas, which we say that the oldest civilization here. We say that in the happiness of the subject lies the happiness of the king. And in what is beneficial to the subject in his own benefit, which is dear to himself, is not beneficial to the king. But what is dear to the subject is beneficial to him. This is the basic premise of governance. And we say that DRR is also one of the important area of governance where we all work together. This particular webinar has been organized in the context of series of earthquake tremor which we felt Delhi and in the NCR region, and that series has gone into 11, 12 kind of smaller, starting from 2 to 4, 4.5 plus. So this is giving us a kind of a cause of worry. How much worry is better to or not to? So in this context, we are thinking that whether we should keep worrying or we should start also looking at differently in terms of the preparedness and also that how we can go for mitigating so that risk, once it happens, the disaster is responded well and impact is reduced. So in this context, we're having a larger canvas, but with the luminaries of speakers which we have, and to deal with how to deal with a situation of twin disaster with cascading effect. An earthquake is very, very known for this cascading disaster, as we have seen in Japan, earthquake happened, then tsunami, then to the nuclear emergency, and nuclear emergency to the kind of a complete blackout for 4 days with in the absence of power. So in such kind of a scenario, if it happens, gets repeated, how we are actually prepared to respond. So the second question goes to the how will the preparedness situation in the earthquake time, especially Delhi and the NCR region, and also that northern India, which we say. What should be the key guide for a common person occupying different structure when earthquake would strike? It is assumed that people would be in different structures. Somebody would be in school, somebody would be in office, somebody would be in their different offices. Time people will not be together with the family. So depending on the time when disaster strikes where we are. So what is the preparedness level? That is important. And what immediate policy guidelines we should have so that that impact or preparedness be started at by national government, by the state governments, and also by the local communities, and what are the experiences which we had in the past. So this was the idea, and for that we have 5 important distinguished guests today, starting from Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, Executive Director, National Institute of Disaster Management, Dr. Krishna Vatsa, member, National Disaster Management Authority. We had Dr. Thirupuga also, but unfortunately he's not there because there is some important assignment. So he had regretted, and on behalf of him, I'm just conveying his regret to all of you. And he would not be able to attend today. But Amod Mani Dikshit is there. Dr. Amod Mani Dikshit is representing NSET. And Sri O.P. Singh ji is there, former Director General of the National Disaster Response Force and also former Director of the Uttar Pradesh Police, Uttar Pradesh government. We have Sri Anil Sinha ji, legendary kind of a professional who has been there in disaster management for long. And also last assignment which he had as a Honorable Vice Chairman of the Bihar State Disaster Management Authority. I welcome you, sir. And we have Professor Ravi Sinha. Thank you, sir. Ravi Sinha from Indian Institute of Technology, Engineering Department, Mumbai. So this is the set of speakers, and we thought that we would be discussing for 2 hours. And this is important that how, and you see this in the webinar which we distributed, we have written 53 seconds. That is very, very important, that how we are utilizing 53 seconds. So I would like to show a small video of 53 seconds before I invite formally Major General Bindal, ED and IDM, to actually welcome you all. Meanwhile, just start a 50 seconds video that how one earthquake actually create a havoc in terms of when disaster strikes. So I hope everybody can see this. Just try to see that how this 53 seconds create a chaos from Nepal earthquake. So thank you very much for this watching this video. Now I would request Major General Bindal, Executive Director, National Institute of Disaster Management, who is a very, very luminary officer from Army. And he got into defense services and got commissioned in 1985. And alumni of the National Defense Academy. Major General M.K. Bindal is a graduate of the Defense Services Staff College and has attended the prestigious Higher Command course at the Army War College, excelling in all other career courses in the Army. This is very, very important thing which we wanted to share about him. And also, he has also been posted as Deputy Director General of the Directorate of Army Air Defense, where he was dealing with the operations trade, air defense control, and reporting the intelligence issues. Major General Bindal served as a Provost Marshal in the United Nations mission in the Mozambique, where he was deeply involved in the liquidation of the mission. And he has been the Director Center for United Nations Peacekeeping Force, New Delhi. And for 3 years, he was also the Secretary of the International Association for Peacekeeping Training Centers. But in addition to this, I would like to mention one thing, that he was also there and into operation of post-Bhuj earthquake in 2001 in Kutch. And so this is the background which I wanted to share with all the audience who have joined. So far, 166 delegates have joined. And I request Major General Bindal, Executive Director of National Institute of Disaster Management, to please give the welcome address, introductory remarks, and give for the proceedings. Major General Bindal.
Thank you, Professor Santosh Kumar. Uh, I first of all heartily welcome all the participants who have joined this webinar, and a special thanks and welcome and thanks both to Dr. Krishna Vatsa, who's member NDMA, Shri O.P. Singh ji, who was former DG NDRF because of his experience of that time, Mr. Anmol Mani Dikshit, whenever he will join, Shri Anil Kumar Sinha ji, who was also ED of NIDM, and Professor Ravi Sinha, IIT Mumbai, who is researching into this aspect for so long. And I can see Dr. Bhandari also on the screen. So welcome to you all. And I'm sure this will be a very, very good, enlightening and knowledgeable webinar today. Because we are seeing that unprecedented grim realities of the world today due to this pandemic crisis, which is so deadly. And another catastrophe at this point of time will be very, very devastating over the community. While the immediate priority for the country is to battle out the COVID-19, where we are already stretched beyond our capabilities to deal with COVID-19, at such a time, a new calamity will only make us more vulnerable to the, which will lead to a lot of loss of infrastructure, life, economic loss, and many other things. So in this current situation, as was brought out during the introduction by Professor Santosh also, the recent earthquakes, tremors all over the countryside and in the adjoining regions, it has brought a dual disaster scenario into the mind, that there is a possibility of earthquake happening along with this COVID-19 pandemic. And they have triggered a lot of discussions on the possibilities of such earthquakes happening because of the increased seismic activity. Although many of them have predicted something big is going to come, but all of these apprehensions don't have any scientific basis, because still now we don't have instrumentation or the technical know-how to predict an earthquake. We can only give a few seconds warning, which is not enough to save lives in many cases. So it is very important that we need to make our structures earthquake resilient and resistant. We need to follow the prescribed drills. Whenever an event happens, everyone must know what to do, what is best for him, where to run to, whether he's in office or at an open area or wherever. This is especially important because earthquakes will come unannounced. Rest all disasters that we have, we can have a certain degree of, most of the cases we have a full degree of predictability, but earthquake is something for which we don't have any predictability. The mega challenge that we will face during the earthquake during these times is restricting the spread of infection. But when lives are to be saved at that point of time, these things are of not much of a consequence. We've seen in Cyclone Nampan, when our brave NDRF people, the whole team got infected afterwards. But that did not prohibit them, or they did not hold back the rescue efforts. That is where a balance is to be brought out, is how much social distancing, what all precautions for the responder and for the people who are getting affected. So those drills are being put in place, but there's a lot to be done. Structural measures that we talk about, they have their own time constraint. We are aware of the structural constraints since 1970s, when the first building codes relating to earthquakes was being developed and it was published. So there we have a problem of implementation, policy implementation, ensuring its implementation. And that is something which over a period of time, as and when things will become stricter and stricter and penalties will be imposed, it will come into our culture. But the structural mitigation measures are very effective, but time consuming. But non-structural measures, which right now, if we see today's scenario, when so many tremors are coming, so many shocks are coming in Delhi, in all parts of India and adjoining regions, the non-structural measures assume more importance because they can be done now itself and without any time wastage. Like the DM plans need to be revised, the mock drills need to be done in awareness campaigns, the do's and don'ts, the streamlining of the mobilization of communities needs to be ensured, vulnerability mapping and focused approach on those areas which are the most vulnerable uh, for an earthquake, and strengthening the medical preparedness. That is one area where I feel should there something happen during COVID-19, we may fall short of because our medical setup, medical resources are already overstressed. Uh, However, in this whole process, what has to be ensured that there is no panic created. When the shocks came, the way the media started showing it on the TV, there was a sense of panic among the population, as if the earthquake is going to come tonight or next minute. So that panic is not to be created. We have to prepare the community. Now we come down to these 53 seconds that you're talking about. Even Bhuj earthquake was 52 seconds, and my own house had come down. My family somehow got saved, and then I was out with my rescue team. It is a totally different ball game when the earthquake strikes. There are no responders at that point of time. We are talking about 53 seconds and the response. I'll just give you a sequence of events, actually what happened during that time. The first people to take any sort of measures was the people themselves. All those who understood it's an earthquake, they took some measures. Most of the people didn't understand it's an earthquake. They were all confused. Some people who knew, they shouted at other people, go out of the house, come out of the house. They went on to the streets and they started shouting for people to come out. So there was so much of confusion about what is happening. And there is no help. At that point in time, there is just no help. The only help is your neighbors and people whom you know, who you can see eye distance, because everyone is busy at that time saving themselves, their kith and kin, and the nearest ones. The second one is the local community and the community-based organization. They get into action very fast. Now, the strength of this local community is in preparing them earlier. If they have been brought together on a table and they have been prepared, they have been found to be very effective. In Gujarat itself, there were so many pockets where we found within 3 to 4 hours that a langar was established. That was the speed at which they were working. And in some places, there was no help. So the stark reality differences between the response of the local community between the various parts of the district itself showed what was the, how much work had been done. Local authorities come later. And many times what happens, the key stakeholder, like the Murphy's laws, is always missing. Always missing. He either gets hurt or he is not traceable for a long period of time, and the whole institutional memory is with him. No one else knows what to do. So there is a need that the local authorities, their institutional memory has to be kept intact, and everyone must know. The IRS drills, the mock drills, the tabletop exercises, the coordination, it has to be done regularly. Not as a routine that once in 6 months they're doing it. It has to be done as much as possible so that everyone is aware to take on a higher role or a lower role, both ways. So thereafter comes the first responders that we talk about, the NDRF, the SDRF, and people who then come in. When they come in, that external help that comes in, things start getting sorted out. But during earthquake, most of the survivors have already been taken out by the local community. So I will, here in my introductory talk, I'll finish here by saying that our focus has to be in building local capacities, should be our main focus in whatever we do, because they are the people who are going to save the people in that golden hour. And thereafter, people who require saving are those who require heavy equipment to lift the concrete or to dig out. But the life saved by this local community and the relief provided is unimaginable. So that's my first message, is that local capacities needs to be developed. With this, I'll finish here because we've got so many eminent speakers with experience, and I'm keen to listen to them. Thank you so much, Professor Santosh.
Thank you very much, General, for doing this introductory remark, and very importantly highlighting that how the golden hour to be capitalized, especially at the time of disaster. And though when this our public health system is totally exhausted, and during this time it happens, how we are going to actually plan for responding to such situation. And you have highlighted various like the DM plan should be actually operationalized, mobilizing people, how to do the mobilization, strengthening of medical preparedness, local government, local community, and so on and so forth, and also narrated about how the Gujarat experience actually took that. Thank you very much, General Bindal, for giving this introductory remarks and welcoming all the preliminaries speakers who have joined today. This is the time to actually welcome all the speakers. Amod Dikshit has joined already. If you are listening to me, Dr. Dikshit, I welcome you. And now we are going to request Dr. Krishna Vatsa, because he also has to leave a very important meeting today. But he could, when we requested, he could agree for our request. So Dr. Krishna Vatsa is currently holding the responsibility of member National Disaster Management Authority. He is a very known person in disaster risk management and working for the last 25 years. And first encounter of his in the, which I know, I do not know, I may be wrong, but when this Latur earthquake came long back in 1993. And since then his journey began, and then he did master's, a PhD in disaster management from George Washington University, and then moved as he belonged to Indian Administrative Services. From there he moved to as United Nations Development Program, where he was for the last 7-8 years. He was working as a policy advisor for disaster recovery, Bureau of Policy and Program Research from UNDP. He was based at New York, and now he has joined NDMA. And prior to joining New York office, he was also serving as a regional advisor to South and Southwest Asia, and he was based at New Delhi. Long experience, but Dr. Vatsa, I would definitely like to take opportunity to welcome you on behalf of the National Institute of Disaster Management. One thing which we definitely would like to know from you, as you have been there in Latur, and Latur has been mapped as that time when you were there as a zone 1 with the least can I have this somebody is, can I put up your so this is very important. When Dr. Vatsa was there, and we that time we were very much aware that this area will not be affected by disaster, and in Latur intensity, everybody the kind of damages is occurred. Now the Delhi NCR region, when we are also talking about Delhi NCR region, somebody says that it might happen earthquake, big earthquake. Somebody says might not happen earthquake. So in this kind of confusion, what is your advice, seeing this example of Latur and across the globe which you have worked? I would like to request you, as you have to go, but I would request you to kindly deliberate upon this, that how you think the big risk is there and what kind of a preparedness measure we should be looking into. Thank you very much. And Dr. Vatsa, if you are here and you can, are you there, Dr. Vatsa?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Dr. Vats.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Now I can see you also. Once again, I take this opportunity to welcome you.
Thank you very much.
I request you for your deliberation, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm webinar, it's just one.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for inviting me to the webinar. I know I'm in the midst of very distinguished experts and colleagues, who know the subject more than I do. Amod Dikshit, Ravi Sinha. I find it a little difficult, intimidated, here when I speak, but I will try. Delhi is definitely seismically at risk. How much risk, of course, is determined by the zone it is in, and it is in zone 4, not in zone 5, which is the highest risk. Now, we need to understand how earthquakes are triggered. I'm not a seismologist, but I have tried to understand, the trigger mechanisms. As you know that, there are two kinds of formations, intraplate formations and interplate formations. Now, when you have intraplate formations, where the plate boundaries are not colliding, then it's very difficult to understand the seismicity and predict the frequency of the earthquakes. When you have, on the other hand, when you have interplate formation and the plates are colliding, it's much easier to understand the seismic forces and the frequency of the seismic eruption. So, I mean, if you look at the Himalayan region, where Indian plate is colliding with Eurasian plate, we have a much better understanding of seismicity there, and we have some idea about the frequency of the earthquake. But it lies in intraplate formation, and it's very, very difficult to understand the frequency of the earthquake in such a formation. The same goes for the Deccan plateau. You talked about Latur. Latur is located in Deccan plateau, which is intra-formation. And Latur also, nobody could predict that there would be an earthquake. Now, so far as Delhi is concerned, there are two sources of earthquakes. One, there are a lot of fault in and around Delhi. You have the Delhi, Sona, source of earthquake, and it can generate earthquakes up to 6.5 magnitude earthquake. Can you ask some people to just mute their? Yeah.
Please mute all your mics, please. Let the speaker are requested to kindly mute.
So the local fault lines, there is a Delhi Ridge, which is also a source of seismicity. But these fault lines can moderate earthquakes.
कोई कृष्णा वत्सा है, लेकिन चैट बॉक्स वगैरह तो कुछ दिख नहीं रहा मुझे. मैं इसमें वही को स्क्रीनशॉट लूंगी इसका भी.
Please switch off your mic, please. Delegates, let Dr. Krishna.
अच्छा, नहीं अभी बेलनाथ का फोन आया था, मैडम कह रही थी उनकी बहुत ही बढ़िया आपका प्रेजेंटेशन.
So can I? It's about these local fault lines can produce moderate earthquakes, and the last earthquake in Delhi, that was the highest, was 5.6 in 1960. There have been some larger earthquakes in 18th century and 19th century. We don't know a lot of details about those earthquakes, but the last biggest earthquake that struck Delhi was 1960, which was 5.6. The tremors that have happened in the recent past are kind of regular occurrences. No, they always happen. There's small minor earthquakes between 3 and 4, and sometimes even 4 to 5. They are not very abnormal occurrences, and I don't think a precise, definite conclusion can be derived on the basis of these frequent earthquakes. So sometimes, the presumption is this, that you have a large number of tremors happening, so they are precursor to a larger earthquake. But this also has been discounted by the experts. There is no such scientific evidence that a series of smaller earthquakes would lead to a larger earthquake. Sometimes there is also the presumption that if you have a large number of smaller earthquakes, then they kind of preempt the larger earthquake. Again, all these are in the realm of speculation, and there is no scientific evidence to substantiate it. So what we want to say here is that the local fault lines in and around Delhi can generate moderate earthquakes, and they do not provide us any definite pointer to a larger earthquake. But we have the Himalayas also not very far from Delhi, and I think Delhi faces a greater risk of earthquakes from the Himalayan earthquakes. So, and we know that such earthquakes happen once every. So we had, Uttarkali earthquake, we had Chamoli earthquake, recently we had, Gorkha earthquake, all in the Himalayan region. So the Himalayan region could very well be a source of seismic disturbance, which could affect Delhi. How it would affect Delhi is very much dependent upon the distance from Delhi, the distance of the epicenter, and the depth of the earthquake. So again, it cannot be said with any precision how Delhi would be affected by any earthquake happening in the Himalayan region. So far as if we want me to make a reference to the Latur earthquake, there was one or two minor tremors just before the major earthquake, and it was not a major earthquake. It was 6.3. The magnitude earthquakes happen all the time in the plate boundary areas. So, and if you see the impact of the Latur earthquake, even a normal engineered structure could survive the impact. It's only the traditional structures that really collapsed. So the earthquakes are not very common in the Deccan Plateau. We were not prepared, and when we conducted the investigation, there was no precise indicator why the earthquake happened. The earthquake was also linked to the reservoir-induced seismicity. We have the Koyna region where which is definitely an established case of reservoir-induced seismicity. And in Koyna, if you go there, almost every day we have the earthquakes, and but are of a smaller magnitude, below 3, or sometimes between 3 and 4, and very occasionally between 4 and 5. So we have lots of tremors happening in the Koyna region, and almost every day. Almost every day it's happening. No major damage has happened, and the government has taken up some normal preparedness measures for the earthquakes, but no major incident. But when the Latur earthquake happened, there was an effort to establish its linkages to the reservoir-induced seismicity. So, important thing is this, that we should not be alarmed by this large number of the occurrences of the seismic events. They happen, they do not really point to anything, but at the same time, Delhi is definitely exposed to the earthquake risk, and we should prepare for the for the earthquakes. So far as the building construction is concerned and the application of codes is if it needs to be looked at, then I would say that in Delhi there is a much higher level of awareness of the seismic codes. In the are being applied, and there is a much greater awareness both among the developers as well as among the buyers about the need for seismic code which conforms to the requirements of Zone 4. So the new construction in Delhi is definitely happening as per the seismic codes. That really reduces the risk. But Delhi also has many older parts, where we don't have, engineered construction, where we have very substandard construction, slums, squatter settlements, and these are some of the areas which are most vulnerable. Now, these are not just, important thing is this, that when you look at these settlements, they are not just vulnerable to the earthquakes, and most of them are located in Eastern Delhi. They are also exposed to some other serious hazards. And these hazards are fire, these hazards are floods, So they are exposed to a wide array of hazards. And I think if we need, and definitely, there is a case for much higher preparedness in these areas, but they need not focus just on the earthquake. We need to focus on all kinds of hazards. And I think if we would be much better off if we have multi-hazard preparedness rather than one focusing on the earthquake. So far as the collision of these two COVID-19 is in progress, and so we are expecting the collision of another hazard, like earthquake. I'm not sure what is the probability of earthquake striking Delhi, but floods could happen. We are in the rainy season, and certain areas do get flooded, and when the monsoon comes, we have many other kinds of hazards. So there is definitely a case for much greater preparedness. In the country, you have seen that in Odisha and in Maharashtra and West Bengal, we had the cyclones striking the states in the midst of COVID, and I think these state governments supported by NDRF have responded and have done reasonably well. I think Odisha and Maharashtra have done quite well in terms of saving lives, and we have some higher casualty, higher loss of lives in West Bengal. So it's not that the states and communities are completely unprepared to deal with the impact and burden of these wind hazards, but definitely the vulnerability and susceptibility is much higher. As you know that NDRF forces in the course of providing this support got infected by COVID-19. Last time I heard at least 74 people were infected by COVID-19. So definitely there is a risk of the responders and the community volunteers getting infected by COVID-19. So, and we need to take much greater care. But I think, if it comes to that, the state forces would definitely be joining the rescue and evacuation efforts. So again, we need to be prepared, but we need not be too alarmed. What is very important for Delhi is that we should have a multi-hazard preparedness that would help us in many scenarios. Recently, Delhi was very badly affected by a series of fire accidents. So, and the probability of fire is much, much higher than, say, probability of an earthquake. we also have seen the man-made disaster, communal riots affecting Delhi again. 40, 50 people died here. And again, that could also be devastating. That could really unravel the social cohesion. That would bring a long-term harm to the community. I think so. So there is and this has happened in those areas which are generally vulnerable to all kinds of problems. So what I want to say that there is a general level of vulnerability in certain areas, and that would be better served by a multi-pronged preparedness rather than one just focusing on the earthquake. So this is what I would like to say. I would also like to conclude by saying that the corona actually has really exposed the vulnerable segments of the country, in many ways. And I think this is also a wake-up call to change the pattern of urbanization. It's also a wake-up call to invest more, to bring more public investment in housing, pay much greater attention to improve settlement planning, decongesting the cities. I would say transforming our slums in water settlements. And I think if we are able to take this the lessons emerging from corona to rejuvenate our cities, renovate our cities, I think many of these vulnerabilities would be addressed. So I think this is something that we need to work together, and this is the lesson that we need to highlight in the times to come. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity and sharing my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vats, because I know you are a very pressing time today. You have to go. I don't know how much time you can spare, but you have highlighted many things I don't want to repeat, but you have very clearly identified and mentioned that Delhi need not worry in terms of their own local earthquake, but you need to worry for the earthquake, Himalayan earthquake. And that is the concern. And you said that need to prepare, and preparation also required as a multi-hazard preparedness, not only just earthquake focused. And you also highlighted that Delhi do have a problem of fire hazard rather than just worrying about this earthquake. So this cascading is also, even if earthquake happens due to Himalayan earthquake, the fire is always standing on the door, at the door. So taking this clue from you, somebody is asking question, but since you have, I don't know how much you are available, whether you are available for question answer or you are just wish to go. You are mute. You are mute. Mic is mute.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I will be here for 15 minutes. So if there is any question, I would be happy to.
Just to say, Doctor, we will invite next speaker, Shri O.P. Singhji, but since you have to go, I welcome two more eminent person, Dr. Ansari and also Dr. Bhandari. Both are here, and welcome you, sir, for this deliberations. And one question which is coming up in terms of this, Mr. Vats, is that seismic map of India has been prepared long back, and there is a need to revise it thoroughly. Don't you think that this is the right time under your dynamic leadership that this project must be initiated? One of the delegates have asked this question to you, addressing Dr. Vatsa. So this is one question. The second question is also talking about this policy planning agency can be instrumental in connecting IITs and other research institutions. So how do you see the role of these scientific research institutions in connecting redefining the vulnerability of Delhi seismic, although Delhi has microgeolation done already, but despite this, at this juncture, when the smallest of the tremor is coming from here, and is always predicted about this larger earthquake from Himalayan region, and you also said it. So what is your suggestion on these two questions which people have asked?
One, I think, seismic zonation, and I would, also defer to uh, the expert opinion of Dr. Ravi Sinha and other earthquake engineering experts. Seismic zonation map is prepared with a lot of inputs, and it's a kind of a very time-consuming process. After Latur earthquake, there was an effort to revise the earthquake map, and it took almost 10 years to revise that earthquake map.
Okay.
So yeah, and I think we can still do that. There is a case for it, but I think our map has kind of defined the seismicity quite well. I don't see many surprises. If there are certain areas which are in zone 5, you see much greater seismic activity there. Zone 4, there is much less seismic activity. So I really do not see, we can always revise it and improve it, but I don't see that, there is an urgent case for doing that. I would say that, we can improve our understanding of the seismic risk in many other ways, which include also microjonation of the cities, um, um, developing the seismic data, improving the network of seismometers, installing more strong motion accelerographs. All those things can improve our knowledge of the seismic risk. So instead of, say, doing this rejuvenation again, we should invest more time and resources in knowing the seismic risk at the local level. That's my understanding of the situation, but I think other experts can also have views on this. So far as the technical institutions, academic institutions participation in this exercise is concerned, I would say that instead of just focusing, what I mentioned is this, that urban density. Today COVID-19 also, if you see this, how it has a very close relationship with the urban density. Those areas which are more dense, which are more congested, have a much greater incidence of the infection. So, the urban density, urban vulnerability, the lack of good housing, safe housing, all these are very closely related, and I think these are some of the areas that should receive much greater academic attention. That all kinds of comorbidities that we see at the social level, they are very much an outcome of the skewed urbanization that we have pursued. So the academic institutions need to highlight how some of these risks and vulnerabilities interact in these dense landscapes of our metro cities. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vatsa. Maybe the last question from you before you leave, very quick response from you. Most of the zone 4 states, and which is likely to get affected by earthquake, do you recommend at this stage they should also have an advanced recovery planning also in place? Other than response is one.
Not just that. I would like that all the states should set up earthquake mitigation programs, and they should also plan for recovery. And a good thing that I would like to inform the people here, that the Finance Commission has recommended a committed allocation for earthquake risk mitigation for all the hill states, which include Uttarakhand and Himachal and the entire Northeast, for the 5 years. So every year they are, there is an allocation of close to 250 crores rupees just for seismic mitigation. So, this is for the first time we are seeing that there is a committed allocation of more than 1,000 crores just on mitigation over a period of 5 years. I think that would go a long way in taking several measures to reduce the risk at the community level. So yes, I think seismic risk mitigation is something that all the states and the cities should pursue, and there is now we have a financial window to pursue that. And there is also a mitigation fund at the national level now, state level now. So all those financial windows are available. So with, we can bring in investment in these areas. So I foresee a lot of mitigation activities so far as earthquake is concerned. Thank you
for being with us. Since you have to leave, so I would extend my heart on behalf of the National Institute of Disaster Management, and we would definitely share. Yeah. So thank you. I would share the proceedings and the key points with you, that what been deliberated after when you left, and the kind of questions of the people were asked. Thank you so much once again.
I look forward to that.
Thank you. So now what Dr. Vatsa has mentioned about this is very critical, that we need to prepare for response. And at the time of COVID, earthquake has a different dimension because different building, different structure. And we showed you that 53 seconds of clippings, that how Nepal got jolted after this earthquake. And people who are in a different, it's a time 11:30 or something, the time was the earthquake, or but it was a daytime. And people were engaged into different, although it was Saturday, but definitely they got affected differently. Now, when it comes to the response, I would like to hear from Shri O.P. Singh ji, who has been the Director General of the National Disaster Response Force, and Government of India immediately swing into action. And India was the first force to respond to Nepal earthquake. And prior to that, he was DG CISF and also the DG of the Uttar Pradesh government, Director General of UP Police. But larger interest in the disaster management, he is also doing his MBA. He has done his MBA and PhD in disaster management. So the question is that one is that academic excellence of the responder, and also that responder as a kind of a soiling hands at the time of disaster. You have been there, and what kind of a suggestion you will offer, one to the commoners, common people, and the response agency, if they have to prepare during the COVID, how they should the protocol, especially the earthquake, when one building collapses, large number of people required to be for debris removal itself, and how this protocol is. So seeing your experience both ways, as a one country responding to the other country, but also our own country, you have seen many disasters, and you have handled in 2015 was very, very crucial for disaster management, as so many of disasters which we had, and you have been there as a responder. So I would request Shri O.P. Singh ji to kindly deliberate upon that. What is your take on this, Shri O.P. Singh ji?
I must congratulate, compliments to NIDM first at the very outset. Let me compliment General Bindal, who initiated this webinar, and particularly to Professor Santosh Kumar, who has been a friend of mine for last so many years, and we have worked together in many occasions, particularly in emergency situations like Nepal earthquake and all that. I must compliment for such a beautiful, timely, professional webinar on earthquake and COVID-19. In fact, COVID-19 is a test of societies, it's a test of communities, it's a test of individuals, and it is also a test of governments. And when you talk of the entire pandemic situation in a very comprehensive manner, then perhaps the important question comes, as we have seen for the last few days, that we had to grapple with the situations of cyclone as well. And as Professor Santosh Kumar said in his introductory remark, that we have had almost 11 minor tremors or major tremors not only in Delhi, but in the whole of NCR. So what is it that, how do we deal with the situation of twin disasters? That's very important question that seminar focuses to discuss. And in a world where major changes normally happen at a glacial pace, the size and the speed of events brought out by COVID-19 is something very extremely rapid. And in midst of the pain and despair, they bring about new thinking, they bring about, and they accelerate the much needed reform. And I'm sure that COVID-19 is going to sort of change the entire scenario towards the new normal. What we call right now is new normal, because we have seen that in 1918, a global flu pandemic that helped create national health services in many European countries. The Great Depression of 19 followed immediately by the Second World War, that also set the stage for modern welfare states. So I think in such a scenario, it's very important to see that how in disaster management domain, response can be re-evaluated to test its resilience, and logistics and trainings, how they can be redefined from the lessons of the COVID-19. Am I audible to everyone? So disaster managers will have to build and strengthen their safety plans. They will have to incorporate resilience metric into their evaluations. So let me begin by saying that Nepal earthquake was a very, very important milestone so far as we can understand the process of response and so many other things. As you all know that in 2015, Nepal earthquake with a magnitude of 7.8 killed nearly 9,000 people, and almost 22,000 people were injured. It occurred on 25th of April 2015, and its epicenter was in Barpak. Hundreds and thousands of people were made homeless, with entire villages getting flattened all across the country. Centuries old buildings were destroyed at various places in Kathmandu Valley. Continued aftershocks, which is very important to understand, that continued aftershocks occurred throughout Nepal at the intervals of say 15 to 20 minutes, with one shock almost reaching up to 6.9 magnitude on 26th, the very next day in April. And the country also had a continued risk of landslides, the Himalayan belt and all that. And on 12th of May, there was a major aftershock whose magnitude was 7.3. So you can imagine the situation all over through. There was a swift response by the Indian government, and the Prime Minister Modi immediately convened a meeting of the cabinet. He spoke to President of Nepal and Prime Minister Koirala. The first aircraft carrying NDRF rescue personnel landed at Kathmandu within few hours, and 10 NDRF teams, 1 engineering task force, 18 army medical units, they were all dispatched, and they landed there at Kathmandu Valley. And NDRF teams immediately started its operations. In fact, it was night operation. The first of it was night operation. They started with the close cooperation of the Nepalese army. And on the very, very first day, after establishing RDC at Kathmandu airport and control room at Combat Engineering Battalion, which was very close to the airport, the entire 10 teams of NDRF, consisting of rescuers, medical doctors, paramedics, search dogs, and all that, they all swung into action and rescued 7 live victims immediately within no time, and they recovered 22 dead bodies in their operations. In fact, in subsequent operations, you might have seen that the search and rescue teams of NDRF saved much more live victims, and they retrieved a lot of dead bodies also. The chief of the NDRF was there to supervise the entire operations. He tried to fast track the entire operations and see to it that necessary guidance was given to the entire operations. Nepalese army, I must say that Nepalese army and Nepalese police, they coordinated very, very well with the NDRF in providing necessary support, and very robust coordination was there at various levels, at the Multinational Military Coordination Center, at OSAC, United Nations. The briefings were held every day at 8 in the morning and 6 in the evening, at Indian Embassy through regular meetings, and also at control room, which we established there in Kathmandu. I can mention about three important developments during Nepal earthquake, which is very important to understand the entire paradigm of operations. One was a live rescue operations at Surya Mandi in Bhaktapur in the valley, where a four-storied building, which was made of mud and brick, collapsed in a heap of rubbles. And this site was surrounded by precariously hanging buildings from three sides. And a victim, which was the victim was 16-year-old girl. She was trapped for about 12 hours there, and my team, the NDRF team, adopted an improvised shoring technique, which is very important, and perhaps they adopted this through the indigenous method and rescued the girl. This was the first live rescue by any international team. The second rescue was a live rescue at Machi Pokri, where the victim was trapped in a four-storied guest house, collapsed in a pancake manner, and she was rescued live after being there for more than 52 hours. That was a record during that time, that 52 hours she was trapped there and she could be taken out live by the NDRF teams. And third was not a rescue operations in true sense of the term, but it was a big operation, which was at Shobha Bhagwati Bridge, which lasted for 8 days continuously. Mind it, it was a long operation which continued for 8 days and nights. In fact, we had to establish a camp there, and we retrieved 21 dead bodies there from 6-story commercial residential building, which again collapsed in a pancake manner. So you can see that in midst of 34 countries in search and rescue operations with 76 teams, there were 34 countries, 76 teams. We had also our 16 teams, and out of which 18 teams were INSARAG certified, which is a big thing. Mind it, so far the NDRF team is not INSARAG certified, but we adopted all the international protocols in all the international practices. And we worked round the clock to locate, extract, as well as to provide initial support to the who were there due to the collapse of structures. Urban search and rescue teams of NDRF faced a lot of challenges, a lot of complex situations, but yet managed to rescue 11 live victims out of 16. And that was something very, very, very extraordinary, and provided a number of critical services also in the most affected areas of Kathmandu Valley. The country in focus was India, whose role was globally recognized, not only by Nepalese government, but also by United Nations and by the Indian government. And we were, I must say, being chief of the force at that time and being leader of the Indian team, which continued for nearly 14 days, we were second to none in terms of the skills, in terms of capabilities, in terms of commitment, in terms of dedications and motivations. However, in certain areas, when we are having exchange of ideas with United Nations teams and so many countries, we could find that there were most of the things related to logistics and equipment, which needed some kind of fine tuning. For example, safety helmet or goggles or working gloves, some kind of uniform, knee and elbow protection, shoes. All these items needed some kind of refinement, and that is why we took note of everything. As one of the speakers was mentioning about documentation, the institutional memory, which is something very, very important, about which I'll talk a little later in slightly greater detail. During all these operations, the NDRF teams faced a lot of challenges. The first challenge was with regard to the nature of building. Multi-storied buildings collapsed in pancake manner, and which made perhaps the entry of our teams very difficult, as rescuers had to cut through the layers of RCC, making rescue very, very slow. Non-RCC buildings and houses made of mud and bricks, they collapsed in heap of rubbles, thereby making the entire structure very unstable and extremely dangerous. This required elaborate shoring efforts also. As I mentioned, the very first live operation, we had to shore up the entire thing, and we could use the indigenous material to take out that live victim, who was 16-year-old girl. And rescue from unstable high-rise buildings, particularly those in the valley, that involved a lot of risk and required special rope rescue technique. But mind it, our training was such a good training that they did fantastic job. I mean, they could adopt anything, made a lot of innovations there. Uh, so far as my understanding of Nepalese buildings are concerned, I must say that buildings in Nepal are very, very vulnerable to seismic actions. The majority of the houses, buildings are not professionally designed and constructed. In fact, they lack ductile behavior. And that is why the census data, when I read that, that indicated that mud bounded bricks and stones masonry buildings are most common up to the tune of 44%, whereas the wooden buildings are followed next, they are of 24%. In urban areas where the NDRF teams mostly worked in the buildings with cement bounded bricks and stone constituted only 17%, whereas the cement concrete was only up to the 9.9%. So you can see the masonry materials in Nepal are of very low strength and thus seismically very, very vulnerable. And the RC buildings, which is a very, very modern form of construction in Nepal, which began perhaps in the late 70s, and most of the conventional RC constructions are non-engineered. They are not seismically structurally designed, and thus they lacked sufficient seismic resistance. So building was one of the areas where we faced a lot of challenge. Apart from buildings, there was a lot of disruption in rescue work because of the intermittent rains and frequent tremors, as we witnessed for the last couple of days here in Delhi. Those frequent tremors also made rescue work very risky and challenging. And when you have an earthquake of this magnitude, 7.8, where millions of people have been affected, and then perhaps the entire international scenario, the United Nations, so many countries are just watching us. At that time, matching the high hopes and expectations of the locals was another challenge which we faced. And working amidst the crowd at disaster sites also posed a lot of risk, and because unstable structures were there. There were certain internal challenges also. You had to sustain the continuous operations all the time. It was a very protected operations without rest and relief. We had to rotate and shift the equipment from one site to another due to shortage of few equipment. Inflammable materials were there, like LPG cylinders in the collapse structure buildings that required extra caution. Mind it, the decomposed dead bodies, the stench of that was posing a lot of difficulty to our rescuers. So if Professor Santosh Kumar perhaps is hinting me to stop.
No. Just I will come you again. Just I wanted to listen in many of the points which you have already mentioned. And I was just thinking that audience, to let the audience absorb that also, so that the question would come to you. And we will have certain one more round which we will come to you and ask couple of questions also on your insight. But you are saying that the type for preparedness to respond, it is very, very
Hello.
So Santosh Kumar has faded out.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What the point which I'm trying to understand, maybe which Mr. Amod Mani Dixit would highlight. So one is this organized force response, which you had from India, and the way you performed, that was excellent. Hats off to you, and it was a very, very outstanding operations were conducted by India, NDRF under your leadership. So we admire that, and now we try to understand, Mr. Amod Mani Dixit, are you there? That this is a response from organized force. Now, if community has to be prepared for responding to such kind of a disaster, where the time is very, very important, and you have been practicing this thing and making Nepal as a kind of a community-based initiative for disaster response, especially earthquake. Your organization, you and NSET. I would like to hear from you that how NSET has planned for building communities' capacity for responding to a disaster. Then we will also go back to that the states, how that the state will should start preparing, and we will have this Dr. Anil Sinha's intervention and Dr.
Okay. Thank you much. Professor Kumar, do you want me to for a short interjection or you?
7 to 8 minutes, and I can't. Your mic is mute. Your mic is mute.
Amod, you are muted. Can you?
Can you?
Is it okay?
You can take initially 7, 8 minutes, 7, 8 minutes, and then we'll get back to you again.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. This is a great honor to be with in the panel with Dr. General Bindal and Santosh ji and Vats ji. Anil Sinha is there, Ravi Kumar, Professor Sahab, Thiru ji. It is just an Upi Singh sir. I had yes, with DG, I had chance to work together with him under the program for enhancement of emergency response. I also see many people in the audience. That's my my greetings to all, and thank you very much, Santoshi, for this great honor to me. I must tell you that I was very much impressed by the brochure that you have prepared. I mean, it is an excellent awareness material, and it is poses not only poses the problems of defining new normal and talking about the earthquake occurrence and all these issues, but then that provided me a lot of challenge for me to say what I'm going to talk in this wonderful very high level webinar. Now, I come from a institution which is it's a civil society organization. It is 27 years old. It has got 200 staff. Half of them are professionals. It is running now, right now, it is running about 11 regional programs spread in SARC region, 2 very large national programs and several others. So we are very much in awareness and training. School program is our one of the AS program. Building code implementation, helping the municipality in building code implementation is another program, and emergency response preparedness and the responders, training the army personnel for the entire SARC region is our job. So having said that, a little bit of branding my own institution, I go back to the Gorkha earthquake, which DG, previous DG, Dr. O.P. Singh ji mentioned about. The Gorkha earthquake, as he said, we are very much thankful, and people remember the contribution made by the rescuers from India, the 10 teams that landed immediately, almost within hours of the event. And the rescue operation, as he told, that it started very, very quickly. And although what we see is that the majority of the buildings that were damaged were to the north of Kathmandu in the rural areas, those 900 plus buildings that were damaged. Kathmandu also in pockets sustained a lot of building destruction. Look back into that, I don't want to go into details except that in our records, or as published by EERI, the California-based organization, I would like to refer to them, out of about OPC here 11 out of 16. So let it be out of 16, there were 16 live body rescued from the rubbles. And then there were several thousand bodies rescued by the formal rescuers. With the leadership of India, India was the first, and it had the biggest number of people rescued alive as well as dead bodies. But just look at how much people rescued, and that was your question, Professor Santosh. People rescued in terms of thousands. More than 5,000 alive people were extricated by the local people, by the neighbors, and a total of about 18,000, dead bodies were extricated by local people. So, it is a ratio of, formal institution. We are thankful. They provide the leadership, they provide the hope to the society, they provide the technique and others. But then the national rescuers, they also did a job, as O.P. Singh Daksab said, that there was a very big collaboration because of this. People, they knew each other. We have got cultural affinity. The language was not a problem. So the coordination between the Indian rescuers and the Nepalese army and the Nepalese police personnel that were. But then 25 years, almost 23 years of awareness, continuous days in and days out awareness. The school program that also send messages to many people. Right now we have, my own institution alone has done about 300 school retrofitting, and people remember one of those schools retrofitted by with NSET. It stand and it provided refuge to the rescuers from Philippines. So with this, the message has gone very wide, and if you, I don't know whether I should share my slide here. I would let not share the slide. I'll say that this, 1993 we started from Kathmandu. Now almost like out of 77, about 70 districts we have our this or that program here and there, on awareness, on school program, on training programs and others. So this builds up the resilience. And we are very proud of that. We see that our 20 years of working in this has greatly helped in reconstruction. The reconstruction was not very swift. I must tell you, there were challenges. There were problems of policy, lack of policy. There was lack of awareness even with those who were making decisions with the governance. There were internal problems also, as we all suffer from that. There were mismanagement, and then also there were the international pledge for support in terms of finance. They didn't come as they were slow to come, and then they didn't come in the same this thing. So there are many inconveniences. So it was very difficult in the start. Almost up to 2017, we did not make much progress in terms of rebuilding the houses. Then towards the end of 17 and start of 18, we started sharpening our curve, and at this moment we are in a position in a position that about 80% of the buildings are under the process of reconstruction, and about 64% have been reconstructed. So this is very this makes us very proud, and we are very happy to recognize here that I was there in Bhuj immediately after the earthquake, and then we worked there for a year or 2 years with Seeds, with Ansu and Manu Gupta ji, and we learned a lot. And everything packed inside. 2005 earthquake in Kashmir, we worked from both the sides, from the India side as well as from Pakistan side. So all these knowledge and experiences, we could put it to the Nepal government. My institution was advisor to the Nepal government, and we helped them develop the policies and help organize in the way we could in the reconstruction. So this reconstruction, we were sort of getting into in the sense of being proud, a sort of a accomplishment. Nepal is one of the poorest countries in terms of economic world, and we had our history. Most people know that we had this problem of all the changes in the governance. We have this transformation into federalization, and all this. Despite these problems, we were about how we did it, and here the strikes. and the COVID strikes, and and it is a confusion that has sense, and much have been talked about. I agree to what Siji has told. I agree. Dr. Singh has said about the testing of the community, the testing of the people, the government. What happens is that we at this moment, I mean, let me go to the challenges that I'm facing with COVID. We at this moment, we are questioning ourselves about the work that we have done, so far. For we are very proud that we have done wonderful awareness on earthquake. In the last 6 months, 6 years, we worked with 50 municipalities together with the government, local government, and in the last 8 years, 80% of the buildings newly constructed, they all comply to the buildings, to the building code, despite the fact that they are masonry building, and they are as many of them are also non-engineered, but our code has this standards for non-engineered buildings also. It is a pre-engineered technique. So what we see that we are in the last 5 years these earthquake resistant buildings, even in the nook and corners of the country. But here comes, now people ask us, is the earthquake only one thing? I see here there is a landslide. I see here, the fire. I see flood. We are about to land into monsoon, and here comes COVID. So is it the building only? So we all our sort of we think that we are at a fix. Are we what we did in the last 25 years? Did we prepare the people to understand? Did we prepare the engineers to understand? Did we prepare the instructors and the decision makers to rightly do the things? Although we talked about the intensive risk disasters, the extensive risk disaster, the everyday disaster, we talked about multi-hazard situation, we talked about all the hazards, but these were mostly in theories. In practice, our awareness materials, they are excellent for individual hazards, they're excellent for flood hazard or cloudburst or earthquake, but there is no this integration of this knowledge to be transmitted to the people. And one another thing that kills me, actually, that gives me a lot of pain, is that for the last almost like 50 years, we have been doing this desinventar, and time and again this desinventar has shown us that epidemics is one thing that is you have to reckon with. Epidemics is one of the largest killer in the Himalayan region, not only in Nepal, but also across the board. It is a large, but then we could not integrate these epidemics things into our message. So although we have, and we patted on our back that we have got a wonderful, we have done training programs, we have got training manuals, we have got, training instructors manual, we have got, case studies and everything, but we were single hazard focused in reality, although we talked about multi-hazard in conferences and others. So right now, what will happen is that this strange thing called 19, the SARS COVID, this virus, it kills 3%, but it scares more than 100%. It destroys achievements, many achievements, and it is the biggest thing that it is that it has diluted the confidence of the people. Earlier, they are excellent in house resistant, but now they say that what to do with only a good house if we are going to die with COVID. And initially they were in such a mood that yes, we can, especially in the earthquake reconstruction area, we can was the message. So this is the most difficult part to answer for us. We resorted to the federal system. We gave power to the local government, and the local government were just about to take up these responsibilities of tackling the hazards singly one by one. And now for this, they have the lack of capacity. There is very big capacity deficit. There is procedural deficit. There is incentive and disincentive, how to do, how not to do, how to provide orientation and this thing. But on the and also policy, But on the top of that, this COVID has put such a practical thing that everything has got into a standstill. And then with this confusion, what has emanated, and that's I'm saying that because I have visited the field, the apathy is growing, the confusion is growing, the confusion for tackling disaster is diluted. So sometimes I think that, and there are rumors. For example, the academician talked about the COVID virus clinging to the iron for longer duration, for days and days. So people are getting, this rumor has made people to get scared of the iron rebar that goes into the home construction. So, the result is that our reconstruction, the earthquake reconstruction, has virtually, and still it has stopped. It has stopped in rural areas, excepting the contractor-driven works, schools and some hospitals. They are ongoing, including the ones that are being constructed with your assistance, Indian government assistance. This is ongoing, but some larger one under the formal contracts they are going, but largely they are stopped. In that case, we are, apart from looking at our own and redefining how we should work, or how institutions like ours or even the government should revive and start doing things in a more rational way. We have devoted this lockdown period for musing over that and sharpening looking back into our training programs, looking back into our orientation manuals, looking back into the way we used to do, and trying to mainstream this epidemics or this pandemic into that. So what we are doing at the moment is that our projects are standing still. We have diverted some funds in awareness raising for COVID. We have diverted, I'm not talking about my institution, but the entire organization and some of the international NGOs also. So we are providing some funds for food items also. We are providing some, and with very little field works are being done there. So if you allow me to just quickly say that my experience, what is the mantra, what keeps me going? Otherwise it is very easy to go in and walk away from this field. But then the mantra that I have, I like what I think somebody from other countries, they say that COVID and other disasters, you have to abide by the mantras of both, all the multiple disasters. In case of COVID, you have to consider that you are infected and it is your responsibility not to infect others. And also consider that everybody else is infected and don't bring that infection to your family at home. So this duality of the dynamics of infection, that needs to be at the back of the head all the time. And then follow the earthquake preparedness mantras, and also, it is the drop, cover and hold, it is the fire suppression, it is go bag, it is panic suppression, it is observing and noting down the dog, and all mantras also for COVID-19. It is social distancing, not social activity, it is physical distancing. There should be social cohesion, rather, which we our Oriental fellow. It should be PPE, it should be hand washing and all those things. But ultimately, what I see is that what is there is that ultimately it is the wisdom prevails. So it is use your knowledge, be a rational human being, consider what is the durability of the what is being advocated. So look at the mantras, and remember that the rainy season brings, it's going to bring not only earthquake, but also, rainy season is a flood, cloudburst, debris flow, landslide, and we have to do awareness. Despite all this fact that the awareness is, it's easier to convince and make aware the poor people in the villages, but it's very hard to convince the decision makers, the policy makers, the babus and others who really have control the governance. So that is there. And ultimately what I say that the wisdom prevails, and we have got traditional wisdom that needs to be done. We have to be more human, more eco-sensitive, more environment sensitive. You have to. My last word. My last word is, ultimately, I say that our saying, the Santi mantra, Dev Santi, it talks about the Santi means the recognition and understanding and getting inspiration from the space, from earth, water, from human being, from the nature, from the environment, and be with the environment, respect this thing, and be human. That will perhaps help us to go through this COVID.
Thank you.
That is my all. So that's what I could make up, and I'm
thank
ready
you
for.
very much, Dr. Dixit. You have spent 25 years in this area and have been constantly actually engaged in the saving people's life, and that is your commitment. And you say that mantra is that. And you have also mentioned about that all those years which could help in responding to Nepal earthquake. The entire awareness program which got into the DNA of the people, local people. So that is very important. How to actually we inculcate the habit in the people, and that is the key success which you said that is the mantras of Santi and humanity. And you said that behavior should be rational. So that is the crux, and what Dr. O.P. Singh was also mentioning in his deliberations, that how the entire operations was done in a very composed and calm manner, with very well integrated. This large number of international agencies were there. So both community intervention and the local force, as you said, that national. He was talking about the Gorkha integration into the response. I would request you to please stay with us, and we will get back to you again. Just to see this, and I remember our book on thinking fast and thinking slow has been debated very, very at length on how to have a rational behavior, and that is very, very an entire choice which we say that depends on the rationality. The moment you become irrational, that is the whole thing gone. So I would request at this stage, I would like to invite, because you have been there. You want to say something? You are mute. You are mute.
Sorry, I muted myself. Sorry. That's moment.
You want to say something, or we request Anil Sinha?
Am I okay? Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. No, today is NSET day, and there is a celebration going on in my institution. So I'll be here for some time, but allow me at least for the last part of the meeting that is happening. I would like to join.
So
very close by.
Our heartiest congratulations from all the panelists. They all know you very well, and NSET work is also they are familiar with. Heartiest congratulations and long live NSET for doing this good work and community. So that is our wishes from the entire panelists and also from NIDM and those delegates who have joined. They know you and they don't know you also. But this is important. They have got your background also, that what is there. So thank you very much for being with us. And I would request Anil Sinha, because he has been the pioneer in terms of then the whole thing is started. So I will not go into the details what he has made the contribution, but I say that when High Power Committee got constituted and he was the member secretary of that, since then we say that long back when the NIDM was not even came into existence, and then he was there, he came as NCDM executive director and also NIDM. So those days to now being with the BSDMS spending 6 years there, and now today on different forums, how do you see this, all the important deliberations which have been made can go actually to the local level? And seeing this, and then we will have this intervention of Shri Ravi Sinha, Professor Ravi Sinha, because he is talking about DM plan and how this has been done. He's also a member of the Maharashtra State Disaster Authority, being the head of the Civil Engineering Department of Indian Institute of Technology, Powai, Mumbai. But before that, I would like to have Anil Sinhaji's deliberation. Anil Sinha sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Santoshji. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, First of all, to NIDM, General Bindal, you, Professor Santosh Kumar, for organizing this. I think this is something which is very timely and topical, and I'm very happy that very eminent experts have already spoken, and there is not much really to say as well the subject, the response, and everything is concerned. But let me still share 4 or 5 points, and I'll try to do it in about maybe 7-8 minutes, so that we can hear Professor Ravi Sinha also, and leaving some time for question and answer. You see, first of all, a couple of words about COVID 2019. You know, I call it 2019, and I also intend to write to WHO, because when you say COVID-19, it is something like a serial number. Was there a COVID-18? Was there a COVID-17 or 16? No, there was no. You see, so 19 can get confused with a serial number, but 2019 will not get confused. And let us remember, 2019 will always represent a year, you see, which is the year that is last year when it is started. And let us remember that, you know, UN has also started talking of, you know, COVID era. So the COVID is here to stay for some time. I hope it is not long. But the conversation and dialogue and talk about stories about COVID would go on for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, we still now talk of World War II and World War First, etc. You see. So likewise, I suppose it is going to be, this is a long-term story. Second, COVID is a mega pandemic. If ever there was a mega pandemic, then this is the pandemic, which is a mega pandemic. Its spread has been fast and furious. In fact, it has been intimidating. Someone used this word, intimidated. I think Krishna would say, he said in a different context that because of the people participating and the expert. But I say COVID has truly intimidated the strongest of powers on the earth today, you see. And its impact has been colossal on the society all over the world, as well as the economy, global as well as national economies of all the countries practically, including India, to a great extent. Now, even though the speed has been very fast, yet there are many lessons which can be learned. And we are discovering old values also. You see, washing the hands, etc. They have been in our culture for a long, long time. Namaste, you know, instead of shaking the hands, is a part of our own culture and tradition. But now we are rediscovering it, and many other countries and you know, big leaders also adopting this. Next, let me make a point that Churchill once said that never waste a crisis. I want to say it right in the beginning. Never waste a crisis. And we have been saying in our own words that every disaster offers an opportunity to learn. So it is the same thing. We got to learn, and then those lessons must be practiced, you see. Now, one another observation which I want to make when we talk of concurrent or overlapping or intersecting disasters that different people are describing this, that COVID plus earthquake, you know, or COVID plus cyclone, etc., is not a simple arithmetical addition of two disasters in terms of, you know, its various implications, vulnerability, the intensity or gravity of the hazard, this and that, etc. It may look to be so, but the impact is going to be complex and compound, you see, many times more than what may appear to be just a simple addition of two events, you see. You know, because there are a lot of conflicting kind of situations, demands, and do's and don'ts and protocols, which makes the situation very, very complex and compounded, you see. So that must be remembered, you see. Now I come to the second point, you know. First was about the COVID in general. The second point, you see, when we talk of, say, earthquake, is that let me start with the Sendai frameworks. The first principle, the priority of Sendai framework is know your risk, you see. And I deeply believe in this. I have believed in this and practiced it Patna in BSDMA also, that unless until you know your risk, either I mean the communities out there, people out there, if they do not know, if we individually and people in general do not know about the risk around them, then what is the mitigation measure? What is the risk reduction measure? They can take nothing, you see, practically. Therefore, the first thing which is important is to know the risk, you see. And that leads us to public awareness and education. As far as the earthquake is concerned, the worst element of an earthquake is the panic, which it creates. You see, COVID has created paranoia about testing positive. If someone tests positive, I mean, there's a paranoia about this. But when the earthquake is there, and that too is serious, then there is first reaction of wide scale, mass panic kind of a thing, you see. Now, that is what has to be avoided, you see. And therefore, public awareness and education, is very, very important. To say briefly, in Bihar, we started Earthquake Safety Week on 15th January for 1 week, because 15th January was the day in 1934 when the big earthquake took place. That was an Indo-Nepal kind of on the borders, you see. Then we started something very important which will need to be done. We have talked of structural and some non-structural, etc. I'm not elaborating or trying to repeat, Krishna is a very wonderful friend, long time in this. He has talked of these things, you see. Others have also talked. But we started with the school safety fortnight and then innovated into Safe Saturday, you see. A school safety fortnight every year, but then so that it doesn't remain only an annual event. So the government of Bihar later on, innovated Safe Saturday. Therefore, every Saturday in the schools is observed as a Safe Saturday. And a program conceived by BSDMA is now totally owned up by the education department, which is a great, great success. Now, talking of children, I would just like to make a point that our planning should be, invest in a generation. We must be guided by the principle of investing in a generation. I hope the government of India, of course, now NDMA rep is not there, but I hope this word goes to them. There is no point earthquakes planning for 5 years and things like that. I'm very happy that you see the Finance Commission under Mr. N.K. Singh has for the first time made some, paradigm changes as far as the financial arrangements are concerned for dealing with disasters and between center and these states. And I'm sure that is going to be a great beginning because that lays down the foundation of a lot of mitigation measures, other things, etc., which have been referred, you see. There is also a need to learn lessons from each other. We just heard Amod, another dear friend, you see. And I will talk of a lesson learned from Amod, you see, from Nepal. You see, we in Nepal, I had heard of earthquake safety clinic. And the idea was so attractive to me that back in Patna, we innovated, improvised, thought about it a lot over months together. And then we came out with Earthquake Safety Clinic and Research Center, which is located in NIT Patna, National Institute of Technology, which is a Government of India organization. So there is a MOU between the BSDMA of the state government and NIT of Government of India, MHRD, So I'm not elaborating, but that is one lesson learned and we are practicing and we are very, very proud of that, you see. And that the inspiration came entirely from Nepal, you see. So that must be put on record. It involves engineers, it involves faculty, it involves students and all that. So that's a great, great scenario. Then we have talked of, structural, non-structural, etc. Talking of structural, I like to mention one very important step taken by the government of Bihar. See, normally the National Building Code is only advisory in nature. But what the government of Bihar did, thanks to late our, Pujniya, very respected Professor A.S. Arya, who was a member in BSDMA, the earthquake safety portions of the the chapter of the National Building Code has been made a part and parcel of building bylaws, which was adopted by the legislature in 2014. And building bylaws is a law, you see. So that is mandatory, unlike the code. And therefore, in Bihar now, earthquake safety provisions of National Building Code, they have become mandatory. I think this kind of innovation must be tried in other states also. I think that is very, very good, you see. Now, talking of, I think what is needed at this point of time, I hope every state government, gets into the activation of the district disaster management authorities. I tell you, DDMAs are the most important of the three authorities because everything happens there, and DDMAs must be activated and they must review, they must revisit, review, and reassess the risk in case there are going to be both these overlapping disasters. The risk will have to be, identified accordingly. It will have to be analyzed and assessed in the light of that, and there will have to be a new vulnerability mapping of that scenario, you see. So that must be done. And then other things, you follow. You see, the fourth point, and then I have only two more points, Santosh. You see, the fourth point is what we call disaster personality, which was a research done post 9/11 in USA. You see, people respond to disasters in broadly three ways. One category of people are those who freeze because of the certain serious event happening. People freeze. So they freeze physically, they freeze mentally, and therefore they suffer. Because if you are frozen, you are not taking any action, then you will suffer. The second category of people are those who panic. And out of panic, they can jump from 30th floor and 40th floor also. You must have seen some videos at times, and therefore they meet their end, you see. They have lost their rationality because of the panic. But there is a third category of people who know what to do and how to do. What to do is knowledge, and how to do is practice. And this is what must be done in the schools, with the people, with the community, with the RWAs, and everywhere, And we are doing that in our RWA where I live also. So I think this understanding the disaster response personality is also very, very important. Last point which I want to say is that this is the time to start working with the Panchayati Raj institutions. And normally we talk of Panchayati Raj, there is a greater emphasis when we talk of community and village and all that. But I think in the context of earthquake and in the context of COVID 2019, mind it, I am always calling it 2019, there is need to work with the urban local bodies also. They have a very critical role in both these disasters, you see. So we need to, not going to the important 73rd, 74th, etc. And only if we start working with PRIs, only if we start working together with the OLBs, ultimate aim will be, why do we do that? It is to build resilient communities. And only the resilient community can be the best first responder, and it can do a lot to, save itself and save others also. So Santoshi, let me stop at this point. I think I have maybe exceeded by a minute or two, but it will be happy to come back later. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for highlighting all this point. And especially you mentioned about the three types of responders. One who freezes, the second who do the panic, and the third who actually what to do and how to do. So knowledge and the skills. This is very, very important. And it's a building local capacity in terms by bringing of the many of the programs, awareness program, as we have seen what Amod was telling, that is Nepal, 23 years they spent on this, and Bihar government who brought some new lessons in the local level, that how that a local state should be prepared, highlighting the DDMS role. At this point, before I request Professor Ravi Sinha, just one question, where 2-3 questions have come from disaster response, especially to NDRF, and saying this scenario, listening to all the three speakers before, and especially his experience of as in India, they are saying, do you think in India, if catastrophic disaster happens in the earthquake, leading to cascading effect, say fire and all, which Dr. Vatsa also mentioned, in the time of COVID, how much to say that confidence which we can draw from the NDRF, although you have left NDRF a few years ago, but whatever you are actually aware about and seen as you are serving, what are the confidence which people can draw that NDRF and side by side building the local capacity? So both, how do you see in conjunction of this, the larger earthquake? And then we will move to Professor Ravi Sinha. So OP Singh.
Yes, Professor Santosh Kumar, thank you. This question is very relevant these days. Let me first talk about the strength that we have in NDRF. As you all know, that NDRF is a globally recognized disaster response system, and which is equipped with comprehensive response handling capabilities. And over the years, I left NDRF in 2016, but I headed that organization for 2 years, and I have a full confidence on the capabilities, resilience, and the handling capacity of the NDRF. And moreover, it is a multi-skilled organizations. It is multidisciplinary organizations which has an experienced population, and the force has also the mandate to acquire global practices, and they continually upgrade their skills and practices. In fact, in 2014, when we went to Jammu and Kashmir, we could show our metal in a very professional manner, and we evacuated more than 52,000 people. Now, coming back to the main question, uh, we have been talking about response, and Mr. Anil Sinha also talked about very important thing, the DDMA. We can call it in a very professional manner, we can call it how to localize the preparedness at the community level, which is very important. Whatever you say about DDMA, you talk about local community, you talk about anything, but how do we increase and upgrade our capacity building, which is very important. In a country which has 130 crores of people, NDRF cannot be at every place, and it's a national force. It has to reach somewhere. It takes time to reach, though it has regional response centers also. But you have to develop the capacity at the local level, which is very important. Second thing is that what would be the biggest challenges? You talked about the handling of such cases by NDRF. I must tell you one thing, that NDRF has gone into details for various scenarios. In such a circumstances, when you have twin disasters plaguing the country at one go, it would be a great challenge for the responders, because they'll have to keep their rescuers safe during deployment and executions of the operational rescue operations. So response team and the response in general will have to be redefined. As I said in the beginning of my last address, that the response has to be has to be jailed in that scenario. And the main challenge would be that how to accommodate people with social distancing. This would require additional space and resources. You have to adopt various methods like hand, body sanitizers and all that. And you have to also, in the present scenario, when you have COVID 2019, you have the respiratory etiquettes also has to be learned, and the safe practices has to be learned by the NDRF. I think this new role of NDRF, where you have the safe rescue, safe evacuations of people with all the preventive measures, that is very important. And for that, we need to train the NDRF teams in a different manner. In fact, the new normal has to be different normal. And you go for enhancing their capability in a different scenario. You have to give the roles and responsibilities of rescuers in pandemic situations. Social distancing, as I said, that it has to be implemented. Victim pickup, boarding, deboarding has to be different. Maintenance of equipment, what kind of things there. All the protocols have to be maintained. Guidelines will have to be. So these are all preparatory stages for the NDRF to do it. But certainly, NDRF is capable of handling it, as it has been handling CBRN, chemical biological things also that they have been handling for many years. So I think in all the natural and man-made scenarios, the NDRF has the capability, but all that it needs is that it has to refine and fine-tune their capability in the present scenario. And many guidelines, do's and don'ts, protocols in activation phase, protocols for mobilization phase, what would be the protocol for the operational phase, and then demobilization or deactivation phase. All these need to be done, then only we will have to do it. All that I can say in the last, that though there is response capability of the NDRF in a very truly manner. They have the structural engineers, they have the doctors, paramedics, they have the search dogs, they have the medical team with them. All these things are there, but they need the leadership has to provide that sensing business. They are expected to have the continuous sensing. How do we deal with that? And for that, they'll have to redefine their training capability. They'll have to redefine the entire community program, and they will have to arm up with all these things at the local level, at the state level, as well as at the national level. The adaptive phase, the leaders have to be adaptive. As I said it in the Nepal earthquake scenario, that we innovated ourselves in many ways. So my new mantra would be that four things would be there. If we do it, the time critical response by the NDRF, that has to be increased. The mission specific response has to be increased. Dynamic inputs and analysis based operations or mobilization, that has to be done. And what would be the affected areas terrain knowledge, that is also very important. So all these four components will have to be strengthened, will have to be redefined, will have to be trained in a different way. Then I think the NDRF has the capability to handle such things.
Thank you very much, Shri Singh. You have elaborated and given confidence that NDRF is very well equipped, and a large number of operations they have been engaged, and we have been very innovative. And these things will continue, and 5 mantras which you have given for the response forces to take on, so that we can move on. And people are looking if NCR region or Delhi get affected. We have a different typology of the building, different challenges. I don't know whether the issue would be the same as we had in Nepal. But the challenge what we are anticipating, which we wish to have input from Dr. Professor Ravi Sinha, who has been engaged in this earthquake management in representing various committees and all. But side by side, we also have Professor Ansari. I see that he is a town planner. And we said many of you have suggested about the code and other things. And code is law. Anil Sinha Sahab also said that code is not a code, just as a law. And that has to be enforced. So we will also listen to him. We have Professor Bhandari Sahab also. So reflection, I would just count. But before I invite, I would like to invite Shri Sinha, Professor Sinha. What is your take when we are talking about, you are talking about district disaster plan, state plan, national plan, and some participants is also raising question, can this national plan be enforced at this time, the preparation, how to be practiced at the time of COVID? And you have been also the member of the Maharashtra State Disaster Management Authority. And Maharashtra is also struggling to come out from the COVID-19, as they have the #1 in the country as a affected state. And where solidarity is there, that everyone is actually working together to fight it out. And I'm sure that the country will win the race. But at this stage, what do you take as a structural engineer, or you can say that looking at this also and into disaster management? So a long journey of India's preparedness you have been seeing. So do you think the capability of DM plan, I'm just repeating, capability of DM plan to cover all such kind of a disaster which is likely, or we say that impending in the NCR region? As you know, the scenario you have developed, or some colleague of yours have already developed a scenario for Delhi or NCR region. So taking that into account, can you elaborate upon, Professor Sinha?
Yeah, so thank you, Professor Santosh Kumar. So first of all, I want to congratulate NIDM and you particularly for this excellent symposium webinar. It's not just a very relevant topic, it's a very critical topic on which the thoughts and the ideas have to go out to the larger community. And you have organized this very deftly, and I would like to congratulate you as well as your team for coming up with such a fantastic format. The issues which you have raised, of course, all the other speakers before me, all outstanding experts have already mentioned that these are extremely critical issues. So let me just rephrase the challenge which we are facing in slightly different ways. So whether it is COVID 2019 or whether it's other major disaster, there is a perception that these are large scale or regional disasters or even national disasters. But what we tend to forget by making this kind of a phraseology is that the disasters may be large scale, losses are local. Losses are in the household. Losses are in the families, in the communities. If you are going to manage disasters effectively, we have to bring these communities, the families, at the center of attention in everything we are doing. So unless we are in a position to have disaster plans with this as a focus, the effectiveness of what we are going to do is not likely to meet the requirement, at least in the case of major disasters. And that is what we are seeing right now. A lot of resources and fantastic thoughts have gone into how we are going to respond, but it also needs to be reoriented to bring the households and the communities at the center. Now, what is it that we can do? There's just so much experience from past work. So, for example, when we are developing the disaster risk management master plan for Mumbai, that's now about 10 years ago. So, tremendous amount of work went into both identifying what are the sources of various risks and also where the assets and the capabilities lied. And in a city like Mumbai, we found that there are 183 government departments or agencies, 183 government departments or agencies or private organizations which can contribute significant resources in either kind or in human resources in the event of different kind of disasters. I mean, this is a kind of like one city, 183 organizations. I mean, just think about it in the current situation that if we map it all across the country, how many different kinds of resources can be brought on board, provided we do it in a systematic manner. So, and how can we do it? So, one of the things is that we keep on forgetting a very important concept, that is surge capacity. We plan or we experience small things. So, for example, emergency calls of fire department, and then the protocol which goes into how to manage it. Do they have a surge capacity to go to a large scale? Most of it, they don't. And that is one thing which we did differently in Mumbai, that we developed scalable programs. We implemented at the organization level a large number, some 31, 32 of the departments in the Mumbai Municipal Corporation and also in the state government and also at the central government agencies. A scalable capability we implemented. And it has been more than 10 years now since we did the work. So there is a lot of loss of capacity since then. But still, what is residual is so significant that when COVID-19 started becoming a major issue in the state of Maharashtra, unlike all other states, the state has allowed the Bombay Municipal Corporation to lead the COVID-19 response in Mumbai so that the state officers and the state resources can focus on other areas which are not as well equipped. So Mumbai has been left to do things on its own because Mumbai had developed that capacity through the disaster risk management master plan, which did not think about an epidemic, but the resource and the scalable planning is there and involving a large number of organizations, and the effectiveness is showing. People look at the numbers, the sheer numbers of how many cases are there in various cities and so on. These are important, but not as important as what it would have been if we were not as capable of doing things. So mega cities have mega risks. Mega cities, for the same number of people, if it is a full state, for example, Mumbai has about the population of one of the smaller states in India. So states distributed over several tens of thousands of square kilometers, and Mumbai over 473 square kilometer, the same number of people, the impact is going to be very different because of the concentration of people and assets. And this is well established that you have concentration and you are going to have a massive magnification of the impact of any kind of disaster. So the management from that point of view also has to be keeping in mind the very heavy concentration of potential losses. So we have fantastic level of you can say experience to draw upon and use it to the best of the situation. And that is just to look into one disaster which is occurring. Now, what happens when there is a second simultaneous disasters? So, of course, it is going to be cascading effect, which is going to degrade even the currently you can say as inadequate capacity even more. But the key thing is that if it is a well-planned system in the city or in the state, then they would be able to transfer resources, they would be able to scale their capability. If it is not well planned, then of course the effectiveness is going to be even lower. So the key point is that we need to keep in mind that the losses are local. So the disaster risk management has to be from the local loss reduction consideration. Secondly, we cannot have a different plan for different things. So we need to have holistic plans which are scalable, holistic plans which are transferable. And these are not plans by individual. These has to be implemented within the organizations through specific office orders, through allocation of or the rules of allocation, through various kind of government resolutions. That is how it has to be done, not just through some plans which are sitting on some bookshelf. And these are important lessons. And we are seeing, at least in the case of Mumbai, that there is enough confidence both in the national government and in the state government to let Mumbai manage COVID-19 in an autonomous way because of the capabilities which were built in. Now, you just think about what would have happened if we had these kind of capabilities in all the 500 cities and towns in the country. The situation in terms of our ability to manage a totally different view compared to what it is now. But it is never too late. We can start working on it now and start to develop those capabilities so that in future we are better prepared. That's all I would like to add in terms of how we have experienced and we are seeing that we have lessons to learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You brought very, very important point that how it has decentralized, given to different organizations, execution of the plan. And that plan is working well with the organizations, is getting translated. So similarly, as you said, that it should go to the other cities as well. So I don't know whether the process have been documented there in Mumbai or not, which can be shared with the other cities planner, and then they can take up this as a not only that national disaster plan, but you said that national disaster risk reduction plan as well. The important thing which is coming from you before I take I have been taking questions from the participants also time and again. I'm reflecting to all of you. One question is also coming at this stage, like if Delhi NCR gets affected by Himalayan earthquake. So the resource management would be very, very difficult. Dr. O.P. Singh also talked about resource inventory. Krishna also talked about resource inventory. And then also Dr. Amod Dikshit also talked about, Professor Nielsen also talked. So what I'm saying is this, everybody's talking about pooling resources at the time of crisis, when suppose it happens, where the many of the surrounding states would be doing. Do you have any specific advice to the responder or response agencies? Like we have SDRF, we have a local police, have a kind of a DDMA, to actually pick up 2-3 points from your experience of Mumbai, and then we will have reflection from Ansari sir and Bhandari sir.
So what we did in the case of Mumbai is that we went into prior arrangement with many of the supply chains. So we had we didn't actually go to the stage of negotiating rates, but other than negotiating rate, at least in terms of the specifications of what could be procured quickly, so those we worked out. So to give you an example, so let us say there is suddenly a very massive rain in the monsoon. We have that in Mumbai, and we have 2 lakh people who are stuck kilometers and kilometers away from home, and they have no chance of reaching home for more than 10-12 hours. So they have to be fed, and they have to be fed as per their health and their medical needs and so on. So we have these arrangement with the local restaurants, with the various kinds of food joints, where specific diets can be provided, so they can deliver it, so that 2.5 lakh people can be fed a few meals until they can be rescued. So this cannot be done after an event has happened. This has to be done through arrangements beforehand. And there are thousands of these kinds of items for which we have arrangements in Mumbai. So one of the good examples or interesting examples which came in the papers, and now I think it is also being attempted to be replicated in Delhi, is using commercial hotels for the purposes of housing people who need to be housed away from home. So we had the arrangement we could trigger it, take over the 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star hotel for people who were willing to pay, and take the lower category accommodation for the people who had to be put up at government cost. But it did not require like suddenly starting new round of negotiation and those people running to the government saying that their assets are being degraded without compensation and so on. So a lot of these, and I'm talking about thousands of these kinds of arrangements are in place in Mumbai, and there are lessons to be learned by the other states and the cities for that.
Thank you very much, because many things COVID has also innovated, and they have given this opportunity for the responders or the governance to innovate many things, and that governance is innovating. Most of the states, affected states are innovating, countries are innovating, and these lessons to be brought in. Thank you very much. I would like to have in the audience, we have 2-3 a very important person sitting, and they have been working in Delhi. So Professor Ansari, once I welcome you from NIDM, what is your suggestion for responder preparing for response, seeing the typology of plan, typology of building, and typology, what Professor Ravi Sinha is suggesting that we need have a disaster management plan. And so you have been into the planning process of NCR region also as a, and you've been the head of the director of the School of Planning and Architecture. What is your suggestion at this stage for responder to understand the building typology for a planning response? डॉक्टर भंडारी साहब के पास आना चाहेंगे. डॉक्टर भंडारी, आप नेशनल डिजास्टर अथॉरिटी के एडवाइजर भी हैं, and sir, you have been seeing all this what other speakers have mentioned. Can you give a quick suggestion for responder to prepare at the time? I know the seismology and other things, everything which you the scientists know. What kind of a earthquake likely to hit Delhi, and so that responders should prepare to respond to that kind of a disaster?
Thank you, Professor Santosh, for the opportunity, and it has been a very educative and timely event that you organized. I'll make a couple of points, very quick ones, and they will all both relate to the current pain of Delhi that passing through. It's actually a crisis driven by the print and social media, where fear is created. Whether it's a genuine fear or not, we have to see, but indeed a fear is created that an earthquake is imminent. And the attendant question to this is that how well prepared we are. So the 2 points that I want to make is that how do we still... Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yes,
okay.
Clearly.
So I said that how do we set this endless debate to rest? Now, I have more question for the specialists than for the common people, because we are sitting on a wealth of information. In fact, all I have seen... Hello? Hello? It's okay?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay.
We can't hear you, sir.
Yeah. What do I do then?
You are audible. Please continue.
Okay. So
yeah, please.
Let me again say that I was referring to this endless debate and what is our obligation at this point in time, so that we don't add to the crisis which is already we are going through. We all know, in fact, whatever has been written, I think is not a news that we had a major earthquake on 15 July 1720. We had 7 or 8 major events. For the shortest time, I don't go through them, but they were magnitude 5 and above, 6.5 even in 1956, and in 1960. Then we had 5.6 in 1966, and so on. And then talking about the small events, 152 of the events took place between December 2003 and January 2004, and as many as 422 tremors of magnitude 3 and less occurred between 2005 and 2012. Now, I can add to this, but the fine point I'm making is that now when our computational techniques are so fantastic, we have the power of technology with us, why are our scientists not looking at the big data as such and enlighten us? I see a lot of silence in this noise, and the silence is from the professionals, where we say is that, well, it's uncertain, the earthquakes can't be predicted at present level of science and technology. That's all fine. We all know this. But what best we can do is to look at all data in a composite manner. And I don't have the access to that data, but I have the desire to be a part of the study where one can look at all these data and then make a meaningful conclusion out of it. And that can be done. So my first recommendation to NDMA would be that use the power of technology, analysis of big data, the knowledge of experts, and the wealth of information that we have, accelerogram data, and so on. That is one. Second question is that how prepared we are. This is the question that is relevant. Whether or not an earthquake is imminent, this question is always relevant, that how prepared we are. So my question again is that have we moved on from this basic statement that we are in zone 4 to something, this small scale statement. Hello? 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 Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir. Please continue.
Sir, you are audible.
Yeah, okay. So what I'm saying is, that now we are talking about a small scale, zone 4. Everybody seems to be talking, including experts, that zone 4, this is small scale map. What happened to the 7-year-old exercise? I mean, the exercise took seismic microzonation of Delhi. It took 7 years of hard work. A lot of good things have happened there. Why is it that we are not bringing that into our focus and say that, well, in order to know which are the fire stations, police stations, hospitals of Delhi, which will be in the risk, have we used these micro-seismic zonation maps and arrive at some kind of a conclusion to alert the government in time that these are the ones which needs the attention? So the second point I'm making is that NIDM is the right agency to access the information from Ministry of Earth Sciences. All of us has that information, and they are in a position to put together a team to look into all that data. Don't talk about zone 4 that we know it's there. But importantly for Delhi, we have to talk about seismic microzonation in terms of element at risk. So which are the buildings and structures which we cannot afford to lose, and what have we to say about their safety? In this regard, let me make a point that we'll go into the history sometime later, as Anil Sinha Saab is doing. But 1992, Professor N.C. Nigam brought out a report, and I made that point at that time. Then Professor Arya in 1998 brings the seismic microzonation report.
Can I?
Yeah, Harsh Gupta in 2001. And myself, I brought a report both for NIDM, for SARC, and for the DST in 2002. Now, all these reports are saying something which was then further taken by the microzonation report of Delhi MES, Ministry of Earth Sciences. So my suggestion, Professor Santosh, would be that these are all our strengths. These are the results of hard work and lot of investment. And time has come now to make use of those investments and data to come out with something where we add more light than heat. Right now, I'm disappointed. I'm sorry to say that there's a lot more heat in the atmosphere than light I see. And finally, I appreciate most of these speakers have drawn attention to the fact that we must be concerned about multi-hazard situation. We have been telling this time and again, and now actually the time has come where we have to walk the talk. With this, I thank you for the opportunity.
So there have been a lot of issues which have been discussed today, and everyone at some point of time has focused on local level actions, community level actions, as well as integrated plans for a multi-hazard scenario. And rightly so, these two, if they are put into action, that will solve most of our problems. We already have a national seismic study going on in NDMA, in which scaling of equipment and authorizing equipment for SDRF, NDRF is being worked out. Once that comes out, it will also help us in preparing our formal disaster response force in a much better way. NIDM by itself is also maintaining a site on India Disaster Resource Network, in which at district level, data is being fed by each district on various 271 types of items which we have listed in that. And that is available for use by anyone. It's an open source. You cannot feed into it, but you can always draw the reports. So that type of database we can expand more to include more items after this study of NDMA is done, so that everyone is aware what is available and where they can draw, they can ask for help also. Neighboring district, neighboring state, or wherever. So I will close this by saying that the mantra that has been given today by everyone in some way or other is first is scalability of the integrated plan, that the integrated plan for a multi-hazard scenario once prepared with the help of the local community should be such that it is scalable and transferable or as per the requirement. And I will add that it should be appropriateness. Appropriateness means that plan should be appropriate for a single hazard also, multi-hazard also. And sustainability is the plan should be made in such a way and practiced in such a way that it stands the test of time in a twin disaster scenario. Today, if we just focus on COVID-19, that is, or epidemics like what was brought about by Nepal, that epidemic should be integrated into every curriculum and into every disaster, along with another disaster, it should be sustainable. We have many disasters, NATEC disaster, natural technical disaster leading to natural disasters. What happened in Japan, which was showcased, a cyclone triggering floods, triggering storm deluge, changing the shape of the villages. So there are many secondary effects of a disaster. So whenever this integrated plan is being seen, the risk and vulnerability chart that was talked about, that needs to be very dynamic, and it has to be seen with all secondary effects of any disaster which is coming, so that the plans made cover all the possible contingencies. It's a big task, but it has to be started, and it can be started best at a local level. What PRI and DDMAs was stressed upon by Anil Sinha sir is very apt. I also stressed in the beginning that local capacities is the key to the answer, and it has to start from there. With this, since we have overshot, I am not inviting last minute comment from our eminent speakers, but I'll thank each one and every one of you for first of all, giving so many good, valuable insights, and for the participants for asking so many questions and being present there. And we have a series of webinar and with important topics. For all those who are interested in earthquake-related seminars, should keep watching out on NIDM website. Thank you and wish you all and stay safe, everyone. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Ravi, Dr. Anil, everyone.
Thank you for the organizing this. Thank you, General Bindal. Great.
Oh, just I would like, since my net is not working, its technology is not helping me, but I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the panelists, the distinguished delegates, Professor Bhandari, Professor Ansari, and the delegates, all the delegates who participated, along with the panelists. My heartfelt thanks to Executive Director General Bindal for giving me this opportunity, and also participating all through, being there and concluding and giving the concluding remarks. Thank you very much to all of you once again. Thank you very much, and we are closing this meeting.